Welcome to Design Speaks. We're here to empower you to unlock your own inspiration so you can take control of your creativity. I'm your host, BrandiSea. Joining me is my co-host, Julie Hyder. This week, we're going to be talking about ideas and lots of things about ideas. So stay tuned for that coming up later in the show. Hi, Julie.
Hey, Brandi.
So that was sort of awkward, right? The little intro, like lots and lots of things about ideas. I don't know. I couldn't come up with a good title.
More ideas and also some more ideas.
All the ideas. So I am usually really cautious about adding more things to my content creation or social media list. Like every time a new platform comes up, I'm like, I don't know, like I'm already like pretty committed. I know where my people are, but if something's new, how do you know if your people might be there? So yeah. I'm like barely on TikTok. I create some reels for Instagram that I get really good engagement on. But when I had the opportunity to get on Clubhouse, I decided to give it a try because I know that my strong suit is talking. As everyone knows here, I like to talk. So I was like, okay, so a place where you can like talk with people. And so what I found was that it is actually a really amazing place for me to be able to sort of talk about things the way I do here on the podcast, but with members of my target demographic.
Which is super cool.
It's been really valuable. There is a lot of like negatives to like jumping in rooms where you don't get a chance to speak and all you're doing is sitting in and listening to a bunch of people with 1,000 other people. That's not as appealing to me unless it's like a topic I'm super interested in, because I have tons of podcasts. I have YouTube. I have Instagram things that I follow that like if I really want to listen to someone just talk at me, like I have plenty of ways to do that. So it's been a really interesting thing. But what I have found is coming up in a lot of the rooms, which is great for me, but is questions about things that I have like solutions to, like where do I find ideas? And so I feel like sometimes I'm like talking about the same stuff too much, but I have so many different angles coming up with ideas, and the whole idea thing that I think people are always wanting to know more about this. So I thought we would talk about ideas. And the reason I didn't have a good title for this is because I don't know exactly where this conversation is going to go, but I want to kind of let it go somewhere. I have a rough plan of some things I'd like to talk about, but lots of people have lots of problems with finding ideas and coming up with ideas and stuff. So I really wanted to talk about that. But what have you been up to? What are you working on? You actually had to pause our recording earlier because you're very popular, apparently.
Yes, my phone's just blowing up. That was a call about an engagement session at a national park. So I'm super excited about that. But so I started a personal Instagram for the first time ever. I've been on Instagram since 2014.
You've never had a personal Instagram?
Never had one. Yeah.
Wow.
In the beginning, my let's just say in the beginning, I was not as knowledgeable about business things as I currently am. So my Instagram wasn't super great. It was mostly personal stuff. At that point, I hadn't even gone full time in my business yet either, but I was working towards that. But anyway, it's just I felt like there were things I wanted to share that weren't necessarily business related. And I do still share some of my personal life on my business account, but like me sharing my embroidery that I'm working on isn't necessarily like related to weddings or my target market, totally. But like going for a hike, that's related to my target market and stuff like that. But anyway, and also just like to take the pressure off of just like sharing for fun. I don't really know what that's like.
What is that like? Yeah, I get that. So BrandiSea, my at BrandiSea, I've had since, I think 2011, when Instagram like started really coming out, and it was like a mixed bag of business and professional until I want to say 2015, 2016, somewhere in that range of when I started really creating content like for YouTube and stuff. And then I did separate it and I created a personal one. because also, yeah, I love sharing pictures of my kids and family. We have tons of family that lives out of state, and that's the only way they get to know our kids and our family.
Yeah.
And so it was like necessary to separate the two, because even though I sometimes, and you should as a business owner, and that's a whole different topic, like post personal things also on business so people can relate to you, they also don't want to see like pictures every week of your kids like on school. Like I like to post on my personal everyday pictures so that I don't like lose these everyday moments, which has become a whole other pressure. But yeah, I think that's really exciting. And I saw it actually confused me because I saw it popped up. Julie Hyder has joined Instagram, and I was like,
"You're like, yeah, that's old news."
I literally thought someone hacked, like created like a copycat account.
Yeah,
because there was only one picture, and I was like, I don't know what this is, and I guess I'll accept. Like, I want to say friends, and then if it's a scam, I'll just like boot it. But so
it's not a scam.
Yeah, so I'm excited because I don't get to see like your personal side either. So yeah, that's really fun.
Like I used to share that stuff on Facebook, but the only reason I go on Facebook anymore is for like interacting in business related groups. And so I was like, okay, I need to just go ahead and do the Instagram
I need a personal life online. I need a personal life online. That's awesome. I love it.
And so I know we're going to be talking about ideas today.
Yes.
Which is going to be connected
lots about ideas.
Inspiration. But what has inspired you lately?
So, man, speaking of like all the years, feels like years, feeling like just like there is no time, right? I was going to say like a couple months ago, I attended the Adobe Max conference, and then now just realized in this moment, I think that it was in April, June. I don't even know how long ago.
What is time anymore?
What is time? So they had these really cool prints that you could buy, and I'm gonna scooch for the people that are on video. I'm just gonna move this. See the little like seahorse thing?
That's cool. Yeah.
For those of you on audio, I'll put it in the show notes. But they had like these, I think there was like 4 or 5 different like specimens. They were creative specimens. So they're basically like Frankenstein nature things. And they all had like these little scientific like descriptions of what they are. And so you basically like buy the one or the ones that you feel like you resonate with, and you like put them on your wall, and it's like a scientific version of you, sort of.
That's cool.
I've had it since the conference, whatever month that was. And I only like a couple of weeks ago hung it up in my office. I got a frame and stuff. And so I just was really inspired by the description. So I'm going to read it to you. So it says, few specimens have contributed to innovation in the creative kingdom more than the Innovato ideatus, known for swimming and flying well outside of most creatures' comfort zones. And so that's like what this creature is. And it was really, it was just really inspiring and like empowering for me to be a little bit more okay with the fact that I often push against what the norm is in the creative industry for thinking about ideas, inspiration, process. Like I was in a Zoom room. It was a Clubhouse room the other evening, and they were talking about inspiration. And one of the things that came up was like, sometimes you just have to be patient with yourself and realize that like you're not always going to be inspired, and it's okay. And, sometimes you just go for a walk and you can take a break. And I was like, yeah, I mean, yes. And sort of pushed against it the way I do with like saying, okay, but what if you have a deadline? Your deadline's not going to let you go for a walk for an hour. And like being practical about it. And in the end, like one of the other attendees said something like, hey, I appreciated like the pushback. I entered this room thinking that it was going to be a lot more surface level, which is where it started out as, and you kind of took it to a deeper place. And I'm not saying that to like toot my own horn or say how awesome I am, but this reading this like sort of set me up to be in a good place to be able to speak that into creatives, because sometimes I think that I push too hard and make people uncomfortable because they're like, creativity is a process, man, and it's like super and I'm just like, yeah, but also we're paid to be creative, so like nobody cares if you don't feel creative today. Your clients are not paying you to feel creative. They're paying you to be creative. And so this hanging this up and like seeing this little description that's actually on the back of the poster, which I think is unfortunate because now I have to like print this out and paste it on the front somehow to make it look like a specimen or something, because I'm not going to read this ever again. But it was like this, I felt like I resonated with this when I bought it, but I hadn't looked at it or I hadn't touched it since like a couple of weeks ago. And so understanding that like I do tend to fly and swim outside of most creatives' comfort zones, but that's okay and that's needed. Like that's something that I think I didn't realize was something that I did until I kind of read this. So it was like a good, uplifting, inspiring thing for me to like put up as a reminder, not just because it like looks cool and it's whimsical and it has a lot of other aspects of like my brand and who I am as a person, but like this is something people need, and I'm here for a purpose, and this is part of that. So always something super deep on something not very deep.
No, I love it. That's really cool.
100% of designers have felt stuck staring at the blank page. You, your coworkers, your competition, even creatives at Pixar get stuck and feel uninspired. Designers, it is literally our job to be creative and stay inspired all the time. I get it. I've been there. I've been stuck, feeling overwhelmed and full of self-doubt as a creative, staring at a blank page and wondering if I'll ever have a good idea again. I'm BrandiSea. I've been a designer for over 20 years, and I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be that way, and the process is the key. For the past decade, I've used this process to earn design awards and create my best work. But more importantly, I've helped other designers win awards and create their best work. I want to guide you through the process that's going to help you the next time you feel creative block, the next time you're stuck staring at that blank page, hitting your head on your desk. I'm going to show you how it works, how to use it, how to incorporate your own voice so you can finally make the work that's going to get you noticed for creating like you. The Strategic Process Essentials course launches in late February. Visit brandisea.com/courses to sign up, or if you find me on Instagram, you can send me a message and I will help you find it. I can't wait to guide you through this process, to help you take control of your creativity, get past creative block, and create work that gets noticed. So let's talk about ideas, Julie. What are ideas anyways? Like when I say like, Julie, have you had any good ideas? Like, I just feel like I don't know that people have the correct outlook on like what an idea even is before we even go into how to find them or where to find them.
That's kind of a tough question. I think we tend to think of it as like some new thought that you have, but so lately I've been working on a lot of stuff in my business that has inspired me and given me ideas, and it's not always like new groundbreaking stuff, but it's something that will like it's kind of problem solving, I guess, in a way. Even if you don't know, like, even if you're not like, here's my problem, what's the answer? Sometimes you come up with an idea that you're like, wow, this would be a great fit for this area of things. And yeah, like, it's not always like something new. It's just something that you haven't tried yet that could potentially work. It's like a potential thing. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
this is a good answer.
No, that's really good. That's literally like what I was trying to get at is like, I think that as creatives, especially, like as humans, we do this, but as creatives, especially, like we're always on the hunt for like the new thing, like the next big thing. Or, I need to have like the new innovative idea or do something that no one has ever seen before. And, I think that when we're only ever chasing ideas, that we're putting a lot of emphasis on the wrong thing. And that's a lot of the reason, like I say, trust the process, not necessarily just the strategic process that I teach, but the process of ideating, the process of your creative journey, instead of always just trying to look for that one end thing. That's like pretty overrated. It's like just thinking about ideas all the time. When do you actually get to your idea? How do you actually get to find one? And if you find one, what do you do with your idea? Because an idea is useless unless you do something with it. So I was writing my notes for this episode, and I came up with this it's probably goofy, but it is what it is, and it's who I am, so we're just going to run with it. I was thinking that like if the idea is like the treasure, right? An idea is a treasure. It is like something shiny. It's something valuable. Sometimes it's really unique. But if the idea is the treasure, if you think about yourself as a pirate, so if you are a pirate, pirates like treasure, so the stories say. And so we'll just say we're creative pirates. This is getting weirder by the second.
I love this.
I don't know.
Can I have a little hook hand? Here we go.
I'll make you one. I'll make it out of, I don't know, what's something funny, designy. I have no idea, but I'll make you one. So if we are creative pirates and we're like always on the hunt for treasure, right? This is going to sound goofy, but it's going to make sense. So if you're looking for treasure and you are a pirate, do you ask other pirates, like, where do I find the treasure? No.
They're not going to tell you.
Because they want that for themselves and you want it for yourself. So why would you ask someone else? Okay. So if you wait around on your ship, do you just sit there and like wait for the treasure to like fall in your lap?
Not gonna happen.
No, that would hurt. First of all, if it just like fell from the sky into your lap, but also it doesn't happen like that. Like you have to search for treasure. And so if you are a creative pirate searching for like needing ideas, you can't look at other people for their ideas, which is the downfall of a lot of creatives. They're always looking on Dribbble and Pinterest and all this. You're looking at other creatives for their treasure when you should be looking for your own treasure. And when you're sitting around waiting for inspiration to strike, it's no different than sitting like in a rocking chair on your ship as a pirate and just hoping that the treasure will fall out of the sky. And I'm not discounting that sometimes you just randomly have epiphanies. Sometimes you do need that non-thinking space to, in the shower, go, oh my gosh, that's the thing I needed. But comparatively, if you put yourself in a position to find the treasure, if you have a map, if you have a place to look, you are more likely to find it as opposed to just wandering around the desert island, just hoping somehow, some way you'll just like stub your toe on a big treasure box. So I know that was weird, but I hope it made sense. So what I'm hoping to talk about today is like this idea of, I always talk about maps and plans in regards to like the strategic process, because the process that I teach uses a word map as a literal map to your designs being good. But there's also like sort of map-ish things that you can set up for yourself to give places to look, to find ideas, to find something unique to you. And I always say unique to you because I don't think there's nothing new under the sun. Like anything that I do that's I feel is like really cool and interesting, it's probably been done in some iteration somewhere in history. And maybe I don't know it, and maybe I'm not directly, I'm hopefully not. I do a lot of work to make sure I'm not ripping anybody off, but there's really nothing brand new. So then the question comes back to, okay, so how do you find ideas? And that's kind of what I was hoping to talk about in a weird, wacky, creative pirate way.
I like it.
So, I talk a lot about uncommon inspiration. And the reason that I call it that is because if you say common inspiration, I would say common inspiration is the stuff that everybody's looking at, where you're asking the other pirates for their ideas, for their treasure. And while it's good to be inspired by other creatives, like that's why we share, that's why we share our work, so that we can show the world what we're doing, so we can inspire other creatives. So if we've been in the business a long time, we can inspire younger creatives to see like what they can do with their skills. But uncommon inspiration is something that maybe other people aren't looking at. And if they're looking at it, they're not looking at it the way you are. You and I are going to look at the exact same stuff completely differently. We may look at different details in a book differently. We may read the same book and different passages are going to jump out at us.
Yeah.
And so I like to call it's a mouthful, and I know that. And it's always a lot to type for hashtags on Instagram. But uncommon inspiration is like this really unique thing. And I want people to know that looking where everybody else looks is only going to make your work look like everybody else's.
Yeah.
Andy J. Pizza says, "You art what you eat." And what he talks about in that is like, just like if you eat junk food all the time, your body's gonna start feeling and probably eventually looking junky. And not anything about like diets or anything like that. Like outside of that, it's just like how you feel. And so if you're constantly just looking at the same stuff, if you are inhaling lots of the same inspiration, you will only be producing the same kind of stuff that you looked at. And so the only way to have uncommon and unique work is to look in uncommon and unique places. I'm going to take a drink of water. So I'm going to let you talk now.
Yeah. And I think you're going to feel like your junk food analogy, like you're going to feel better about that too. So I think I mentioned in the last episode that I went through all of the copy in my website and pretty much rewrote all of it.
So much work.
When I launched that website in 2018, I unfortunately looked at what a lot of other like leaders in the elopement photographer industry were doing, because I wasn't sure like what direction to go in. And that copy did not feel as like
authentic
to me, and it didn't feel as powerful speaking to my target market. And I've done a lot of work since then to like get to this point. So finding my why, going through the story brand framework, that helped tremendously. But this time when I rewrote it, I have not been on anybody's website in a really long time, and I try to keep it that way. I don't want to see what they're doing. As it is, I came up with like a new title for myself, because I felt like photographer wasn't enough, but saying I'm a wedding planner is like a direction that it's not quite really what I am, but almost.
Right.
And so I did a ton of brainstorming, and I came up with experience creator. So my title now is Adventure Elopement Experience Creator and Photographer. And then I put it up on my website, and one of my friends were like, hey, this other mutual friend of ours who's also an adventure photographer also calls himself that. And I was like, dang it.
Oh,
so
man.
It is true that like, it's hard to come up with something new. There are only so many words in our language to choose from.
You can always choose a different language.
I didn't know that he had that. Like I didn't, take it from him. It feels me because I came up with it, because I was looking at what I'm offering and who I am and what my brand is and everything. But yeah, I love the copy that I've written now, because I didn't look at somebody else to try to copy. I thought of like, what is it that people coming here, who my target market, like what do they need to hear, and what am I offering, and like how can I make it sound great and enticing to them? And I just wasn't looking at anybody else. And now I'm really proud of it, and I'm not just like, yeah, I have some copy on my website, it's okay, I guess. Now I'm like, yeah, okay, it's working for me.
Right.
And I think it's really important to put those blinders on and just not be looking around at that sort of thing. It's okay to look outside your industry too. But again, just don't like, once you get attached to that idea of like, oh, this is really good. I wish I had thought of this. Then you start to want to copy.
Yeah.
And like, where's the line of like how
Thin
much
ice.
copying? And
Yeah.
it feels icky.
It does. And I mean, and here's the thing. I have to say that it's hard for me to accept, but I do know that there are designers that don't feel icky about doing that. There are designers and creatives that feel totally okay with like looking at other people's stuff and just tweaking it a little to quote unquote make it their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I've decided that it's kind of a moot effort for me to sort of try to make them change teams, so to speak, like to convince them that that's like not good, because they aren't in this for the same reason that I'm in this. They're not in this to solve problems. They're not in this to do what designers are supposed to do. And so, just as a side note, like if you ever like interact or find those people that are just like, I changed this, that, and I changed the colors and I put my own typeface on this template thing.
Yeah.
I'm making money. What's the difference? I would say always like speak your truth. And if you feel like they are doing something wrong, like please call them out. But also sometimes people are just okay with staying where they are and not growing and not trying to be innovative and not trying to find their own uncommon inspiration, which why wouldn't you? But I know that there are out there. And so just as an encouragement to those of you who are like me that sort of like start to get down about the state of the design industry sometimes, like, why is everything so homogenized? Like, why does everybody's work look like everybody's work? And instead, like, you just do you and you make your impact. Yeah, you make your impact. And if the downside to this is that sometimes when you start to make your mark, then people want to copy you. And so just being aware of like what that looks like is really important. So I wasn't planning on talking about that, but it just sort of like popped into my head. Like I said, I didn't know where this conversation was going to go. So that's why the title is TBD at this time.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Knowing that like there kind of aren't any new ideas for the most part, how do you look back at history? Like, okay, I always think about fashion, like the 90s is like coming back in fashion. I'm like, I've already done this.
Oh man, you know? I can't
like,
even.
And I think even about like some of the clothing from the 80s was kind of 20s. Mm-hmm. And like it's just really interesting how like I think in fashion a lot of times like an era gets repeated, but only parts of it, of course.
Right.
But how do you look back at history and pull inspiration from that where you know, it's not current by any means, so it's not like it's on everybody's radar, but like pulling from that but making it your own and making it updated and something like new from something old? Yeah,
totally. So I've got like a humongous list of like things you can look at for inspiration and how you look at those things and how you use those things. So I think I've talked a lot in general in the past of like, you can look outside, you can look at fashion, you can look at travel, like you can look at books. But in coaching sessions over the past year, I've realized that like that's not enough. Like, because a lot of people aren't built like me and don't think like me. And so they don't know how if they're not trained, right? The other weird analogy that you will now be introduced to on this podcast is the idea that finding inspiration and seeing inspiration requires a third eye. And so I know that my third eye is always open, like always. It's always open. And so for other people, it's kind of sleeping and they don't like, even if it's open, like they'll look at, maybe they're in a history museum, speaking of history, and they'll just go, yeah, there's lots of history here. Not really feeling inspired. So yeah, looking at history, I'll talk about it like a couple different ways. So one way is a little more literally, like as a designer, like researching into things like looking at historical documents for typography, looking at if you are trying, especially, and this comes into the process that I teach in like the research phase, like if you have a concept that is like time related. So if yours is like Art Nouveau chic or something like that, you can look at documents, you can look at things from that era instead of getting on Pinterest and looking up Art Nouveau chic design, which is what most people do. Okay, so what is Art Nouveau? Dig into like why is it even called that? It was Art Nouveau is just new art in French. And so it's like, okay, so what does that mean? Why did they call it that? And learning about the history itself. Look at maps, look at textures, look at the kind of like inks that they used, look at textiles that they used in their bedding. If you're researching like France, look at the stuff from like Louis the 14th. You can look at the Louvre. You can look at Versailles for things like you can look for colors that they used in certain eras because certain colors were not available to certain people. And if you're like just looking deeper into these things, look at the fashion. Like men wore heels and it was fashionable for a time in history, not just French, but American history, and look at the kind of things that they did. You can look at architecture and not just like, you have to be able to go a level deeper with uncommon inspiration and go, okay, this building's really cool. Okay, but what's cool about it? What do I like about this building? Like if you and I are both standing in front of like the Chrysler building in New York City, I'm going to be interested in one thing and you are going to be interested in another thing. And that's exactly what uncommon inspiration is. And then I can go, okay, wow, I really love the Art Deco like metalwork on this building, and take a picture of it and take it home and do something with it. And that's where that's like a way to look at history and like find some unique things about it. That's how you can like take an old thing and make it new, is by like, okay, I see this texture that they used on the bedding at Versailles, and how can I use that in this design that I'm working on? Maybe it's a weird overlay on something. Maybe it's you're doing like a collage look and you can make it look like you cut out a piece of cloth and put it on something. All of those things require you to think a little bit deeper. And like we talked about goal setting, and it's all about asking why, right? So it's not just, I see a thing I like, but why? Why do I like it? What's cool about it? And so history is like a really robust place to look, because there's so like, it encompasses so many things. And the other thing that I really like to use is, and I think I've talked about this before, it's one of my all-time favorite go-to books, is Allegory and Symbols in Art. It's a book that I got from the Getty Museum. And I go to a lot of museums because this is a huge point of inspiration for me, is all these different things. But basically it shows you like the symbology in different works of art throughout history. And so then when you're creating even things like a logo, you can go, okay, well, if my concept is maybe summer in Paris or something, I don't know, that'd be a weird concept for a logo, but we're just going to run with it. You can go, okay, so summer is one of those things that has a lot of symbology in art. So what kinds of things symbolized summer? So things like sunrise. And so maybe you can incorporate that into the logo somehow, because what's like a really line art sort of simple way, an icon version of sunrise. And maybe that can be something that you play in that maybe no one else thought of, because they're just looking at summer. Okay, what's summer? Popsicles, flip-flops, as opposed, as opposed to like going a level deeper. That was a long answer.
That's okay. That was always one of my favorite things, like in my art history class in college, was I remember, and I don't remember the name of the painting, but we were looking at one painting in particular, and I just couldn't believe like how many different symbols were put into this like seemingly very simple image. And it was just full of symbolism. And at first you look at it and be like, okay, why was that interesting? And like, why was that scene interesting enough?
Why was this important? And why do I have to memorize this again?
Yeah. But then like, I think we spent an entire class period just talking about, you know, this one painting because there was so much hidden in it. And I also love that you mentioned like not just looking at the visual things from history, but also like, you know, let's say like blue was a very popular color in a certain time period, but like why? Well, because they didn't have it before, and suddenly like it was like a symbol of wealth to be able to use this color of blue in your clothing or your pottery or whatever. So just like knowing that kind of stuff, going beyond just like the visual and also looking outside of the industry. So looking at architecture when you're dealing with fashion and stuff like that. So I think that helps you steer away from direct copying, because, you know, if you're looking at a dress and you're designing a dress, it's a whole lot easier to copy that than if you're looking at handwriting, you know, from an old document and you're working on a dress.
Totally. And the thing about finding a new, quote unquote, interesting, innovative idea these days in the era that we live is all about mixing things. It's all about mixing genres. So all the crazy good new music, and we talked about this before we started recording, that like you had a band you wanted to introduce me to and they like mix a couple genres, and that's really the only way to sort of have a chance at coming up with something new and interesting.
It's true.
Is mixing things, because I think up until I would say like the 90s was the last like clear line of like you could say that was this year, and then the 80s you could say that was this year, and all the way back through history you could kind of pinpoint eras. But like I think after the 2000s it's sort of like, okay, like there's like the hipster look, I guess, but even that is sort of like that sort of grabbed onto a little bit of like the 90s like grunge with like the flannels and beanies, and like mixed it a little bit with like the 80s mom jean thing. And like, so even fashion and stuff now, like all the really interesting things are happening because they are mixing stuff. They are creating this like weird soup of something and something and something else. The leftover soup, if you will. It's like, what's in the fridge for dinner? I don't know. There's like a casserole, and like there's some red chili from Frito pie the other night. Let's like make like a soup, and that'll be something new. So it's sort of like, gosh, I'm making a lot of weird analogies on this episode. This is what happens when we talk about inspiration. So it's like that. It's definitely being able to mix and match things.
Yeah. No, I think with fashion, it's especially easy to just look and be able to see that of like, oh, you pulled this from this and this from this. And yeah, definitely.
So the other, like, let's go down fashion a bit, because that's definitely on like the top of my list for things that, and I want to be too careful, and I try to make it really varied, because I understand that not everybody finds history interesting and not everybody is into fashion. But what I want to make really clear is that not only are these things interesting to me because I'm interested in them, like art history, but there are interesting things and inspiring things everywhere. And if you look, you will find something that you are interested in anything. So if, just go back to history really quickly, like if you go, I've talked to many people that are like, oh my gosh, you guys take your kids to art museums, they must be so bored. And it's like, actually they're not, because from the time that they could sit still and look at a book, we've looked at children's versions of art, and like Vincent van Gogh, from the time they were 2 and would sit still and look at books for kids about Vincent van Gogh. And so finding things that they are interested in that. And so you as a grown person can be trained. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You can walk into an art museum and be like, okay, maybe I don't like all of this stuff, but what do I like? and go to that thing and spend some time with it and then ask why you like it. So, but I am very interested in fashion. I was going into the fashion industry as a model after high school and decided I wanted to be on the other side of the creative of this kind of stuff. And so, but fashion is one of those things that is so it's like a sister to graphic design. Fashion design is like right up against it. And it's like a twin sister almost, because when there are trends in design, they almost always start first with fashion. And we think that as designers, we're the trendsetters, and we're not. We come after the fashion industry. And that's why I love so much what Leatrice Eisman teaches on color theory and stuff, because she's in the business of setting the color trends for the year. And who does she hand those off to first? The fashion industry. So it comes from her, goes to fashion, then goes to design, then goes to product design, and sort of trickles down from there. Yeah. So looking at fashion is really interesting because, like you said, don't just look at a dress if you're designing a dress. Okay, so we're graphic designers. We don't design dresses, right? Unless it's a hobby. So what can you look at? You can look at lines. A lot of really high-end haute couture designers like to use really bold lines, bold colors. You can look at patterns. You can look at how they mix colors for color palettes. Graphics, there's a lot of designers that do use a lot of graphic elements and how they arrange them, how things move, especially if you are in the motion graphics sort of end, how the model moves and how they design that clothing to fit on his or her body to make sure that it flows correctly. There's geometry involved and so many things that you can find in the fashion industry also that you may not have looked at outside of oh, that's a really interesting dress. I would never wear that, but it looks cool. Again, looking deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we're going to have to stop there because I could talk for ages, and we've got there's still 4 other categories that I was wanting to touch on, but I think those 2 are probably 2 of the really big ones that people have a hard time when I say look at history, look at fashion, and they're I don't know what you mean. What am I looking for exactly? And so getting back to ideas, if the idea is the treasure, you have to set yourself up a good way to find it. As a creative pirate, you need a map. And so these 2 things were maybe 2 points on a map, 2 possible locations for that treasure. And the more you look and the more you practice, not just roaming around, not just sitting and waiting for it to fall into your lap, not just asking other pirates for their ideas, the more you are going to find that you have something unique in your brain to offer the world, and that finding ideas really depends on you being proactive. I don't like the idea of the lazy designer. I just feel like it's lazy to just sit and wait for inspiration, because you could wait forever, and then what?
So you'll never excel that way. You might be okay, but you're not going to be amazing.
Even the pros had a process of inspiration, right? Michelangelo and stuff, they had to learn these skills to be able to make this great work. They didn't just sit back and hope that the gods bestowed upon them the magic drawing and painting skills. So don't wait for ideas, don't wait for inspiration. You can go out and find it. You can set yourself up for success, and that way you're ready. You have some tools, you have some inspiration, so that when you have an idea, you know what you're going to do with it. You know what you're going to use it for. So I hope that this was helpful. And I think that's it. We'll talk about the other things another time. This will maybe just be part 1.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, that's our episode for today, all about ideas, and lots of ideas. Be sure to leave us a review on iTunes, and you can always leave us a note on Instagram at Design Speaks Podcast. You can find all current and past episodes, show notes, goodies on designspeakspodcast.com. Design Speaks is produced by Kenneth Niffen and Dakota Cook. Shout out to Colin from Vespertine for our theme music. And Design Speaks is a project from me, BrandiSea, and is recorded in the shadow of the watermelon pink Sandia Mountains near Albuquerque, New Mexico. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time.